You ever think about how much is going on visually in a classroom? I mean, from a teacher's perspective, trying to keep track of everyone and everything, and then for a student, figure out where to even look.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, classrooms are these dynamic, almost overwhelmingly visual spaces, right? You've got all this activity, the physical layout, instructional materials, students interacting, and to really understand learning and teaching, we have to go beyond just what's there. We need to know what teachers and students are actually seeing and how they make sense of all that visual information.
Exactly. It's like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces are constantly moving. So in this deep dive, we're going to take a closer look at how eye tracking technology is being used to reveal these visual processes in education.
Yeah, for a long time, eye tracking studies were mostly confined to labs with individuals looking at isolated images or text on a screen, very controlled settings.
Right. Very scientific, but maybe not very realistic when you think about the whirlwind of a real classroom.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about the research we're looking at today. It's moving beyond those controlled lab settings and taking eye tracking into real classrooms with all their beautiful complexity.
And this research isn't just about where people are looking. It's delving into some really fundamental questions about student engagement, how teachers develop that almost sixth sense of what's happening in their classrooms, that professional vision, and even the visual dance between teachers and students.
And I think what makes this so compelling is that by examining these everyday classroom moments through the subjective lens of eye tracking, we're starting to understand some long-held educational ideas in a whole new light.
Okay, so let's talk about how researchers are actually doing this, because I imagine it's not easy to track eye movements in a busy classroom full of moving targets.
Well, you're right, it does come with its challenges, but researchers have been coming up with some really innovative approaches. One major shift has been the adoption of mobile eye trackers, these lightweight devices that participants can wear.
Yeah, I've seen those. It's almost like wearing a pair of glasses, right?
Yeah. Right, and that allows researchers to follow students or teachers' gaze as they move around and interact in a natural setting.
So no more just staring at a screen in a lab. Now we can see where they're looking as they're actually learning or teaching.
Exactly, and that's a huge step forward because it allows researchers to connect those lab findings to the realities of real-world classrooms.
Like one study by Rosengrant, Harrington, and O'Brien, they had university students wear these mobile eye trackers during actual lectures and track their eye movements throughout multiple class sessions.
That's a really powerful approach because it gives us insights into how students' attention shifts over time, what holds their interest, what causes them to disengage, and how their visual attention patterns relate to the actual content of the lecture.
It's like we can finally see what parts of a lecture really grab students and what might be falling flat.
And that's invaluable information for instructors who want to make their lectures more engaging and effective.
But even with mobile eye trackers, it's still a logistical challenge to equip and track a large number of individuals in a classroom.
Right. Absolutely, especially if you're talking about younger students or settings where it might not be practical or ethical to use wearable technology.
So how are researchers addressing those challenges?
Well, one promising approach is the use of video recordings combined with machine learning algorithms.
So instead of putting eye trackers on everyone, you just film the classroom and let the computer do the work of analyzing where people are looking.
Exactly. Goldberg and colleagues used this method to study visual attention in university lectures. They took standard video recordings and then applied machine learning algorithms to identify and analyze patterns in students' gaze.
It sounds like a really efficient way to collect data on a larger scale and in a less intrusive way.
It is, and the power of machine learning is that it can sift through huge amounts of visual data and detect subtle patterns that might be missed by human observers.
Okay, so we've talked about the learner's perspective, but now let's shift our focus to the teacher. What are some of the key findings about teachers' visual perception in the classroom?
One of the most interesting areas of research here is this idea of professional vision, which basically refers to the specialized ways that experienced teachers see and interpret what's happening in their classrooms.
So it's not just about having good eyesight, it's about knowing what to look for and understanding the meaning behind those visual cues.
Precisely. Like, think about a doctor examining a patient. They don't just look randomly, they focus on specific areas and interpret those visual signs based on their knowledge and experience.
So teachers are kind of like classroom detectives looking for clues about student learning and understanding.
That's a great analogy. And researchers are using eye tracking to understand what those clues are and how teachers' professional vision develops over time.
One study by Wes Rosenberger and Buer looked at how teacher trainers, who we can assume have highly developed professional vision, compared to student teachers who are still learning the ropes.
They showed both groups videos of classroom interactions and tracked their eye movements while also asking them to verbally describe what they were noticing.
That's really smart because it gives you both the objective data of where they're looking and the subjective interpretation of what they're seeing.
Exactly. And what they found was that the experienced teacher trainers were much more likely to focus on specific details that were relevant to student learning and classroom management.
So they were able to filter out the noise and zero in on the things that really mattered.
And not only did they look at different things, they also interpreted those visual cues differently, bringing a deeper level of understanding to their observations.
Which makes sense, right? The more experience you have, the better you are at reading those subtle signals and understanding what they mean.
Absolutely. And Seidel and colleagues found something similar when they looked at how teachers with varying levels of experience evaluated student behavior based on short video clips.
So even just from observing a few seconds of video, the more experienced teachers were better at picking up on cues about student engagement understanding or potential problems.
It really highlights how professional vision is this dynamic skill that develops over time with experience and practice.
It's like a muscle that gets stronger the more you use it.
Exactly. And another fascinating area of research is looking at teachers' visual perception in their own classrooms while they're actually teaching.
So this is where they actually wear the eye trackers while they're in the thick of it.
Exactly. And this allows researchers to see how teachers allocate their visual attention in real time as they're managing the classroom, interacting with students, and delivering instruction.
It must be like having a window into their minds, seeing what they're focusing on moment by moment.
It is. And studies have shown just how much teachers rely on their visual perception to effectively manage the classroom, monitor student behavior, and adjust their instruction on the fly.
So it's not just about what they say, it's also about where they look and how they use their gaze to communicate and guide learning.
And Puda, Letnin, and Polonin took this even further by focusing specifically on those one-on-one interactions between teachers and students.
So not just the whole class view, but those individual moments of connection.
Exactly. They wanted to understand how teachers visually engage with individual students, both during whole class instruction and in more focused one-on-one exchanges.
It makes sense because a lot of learning happens in those individual moments of interaction.
And their findings highlighted the importance of those subtle visual cues that teachers use to gauge student understanding, provide feedback, and build rapport.
It's almost like a secret language of looks and glances.
It is, and it's something that experienced teachers are often very adept at, but that might be less intuitive for novice teachers.
Which brings us to what I think is one of the most intriguing but also understudied aspects of all of this, the visual interaction between the teacher and the learner. That moment of shared visual focus.
Yes, you're talking about joint attention, that ability to follow someone else's gaze and to use our own gaze to direct others' attention. It's something we do naturally from a very young age.
Like when a baby points to something and looks back and forth between the object and the adult, it's like they're saying, look at this.
Exactly. And in a classroom setting, joint attention is crucial for teachers to make sure students are focusing on the right things and to check for understanding.
Like when a teacher points to something on the board or makes eye contact with the student to make sure they're following along.
Precisely. But despite its obvious importance, surprisingly little research has been done on joint attention in real classroom settings.
That's interesting. Why do you think that is?
I think part of it is the logistical challenge of tracking the gaze of both the teacher and the student simultaneously. It requires specialized equipment and software to analyze all that data.
But some researchers are starting to tackle this challenge, right?
They are, Hataja and colleagues published one of the first studies to use joint eye tracking in actual classroom lessons. They tracked the gaze of both the teacher and multiple students throughout a lesson to see how their visual attention was coordinated.
That sounds incredibly complex.
It was a groundbreaking study, and their findings really underscored the importance of joint attention in classroom communication.
So what did they find?
Well, one of their key findings was that joint attention doesn't always happen automatically. It depends on a lot of factors, including the specific teaching situation, the teacher's individual style, and even the students' personalities.
So it's not just a matter of the teacher directing students' attention. It's a more dynamic interplay between everyone in the classroom.
Exactly. And understanding those dynamics is crucial for creating more effective learning environments.
It's making me rethink all those times I've zoned out during lectures. Maybe it wasn't just me. Maybe there was a lack of joint attention.
Maybe. But seriously, their research really highlights how important it is for teachers to be intentional about establishing joint attention with their students and to use their gaze effectively to guide learning.
So to sum up all of this research, it seems like there's a clear trend towards studying visual perception in more authentic and ecologically valid settings, right?
Absolutely. We're moving away from those artificial lab environments and into the messy but real world of classrooms.
And this shift is giving us a much richer and more nuanced understanding of how teachers and students see and make sense of their visual world.
And it's highlighting the incredible complexity of teaching and learning, a complexity that we're only beginning to fully appreciate.
But of course, with any new area of research, there are also challenges and open questions.
Of course. One of the biggest challenges is balancing the need for experimental control with the inherent messiness of real classrooms.
Because classrooms are full of uncontrolled variables.
Exactly. You can't control everything that's happening in a classroom the way you can in a lab.
So how do researchers deal with that?
Well, one approach is to focus on specific aspects of visual perception that can be more easily isolated and studied.
Like comparing experienced and novice teachers or looking at particular types of classroom interactions.
Right. And another challenge is the lack of standardized methods across studies.
So different researchers are using different types of eye trackers, different analytical techniques, different populations, different settings, all of which makes it harder to compare findings and draw general conclusions.
Exactly. And that's something that the field will need to address as it matures, developing more standardized protocols and guidelines for conducting and analyzing eye tracking research in educational settings.
And then there are the ethical considerations, especially when you're working with children.
Absolutely. Obtaining informed consent from parents, ensuring data privacy, and being sensitive to the potential impact of being observed and tracked are all crucial considerations.
So it's not just about the technology, it's about using it responsibly and ethically.
Exactly. And that requires careful planning, open communication with all stakeholders, and a commitment to protecting the well-being of the participants.
So where do we go from here? What are some of the key takeaways from all this research? And what are some directions for future research?
Well, one of the biggest takeaways for me is that visual perception is absolutely fundamental to both teaching and learning, and we need to understand it better if we want to create more effective educational environments.
It's like we've been ignoring this crucial aspect of the classroom for far too long.
And eye tracking is proving to be a powerful tool for unlocking the secrets of how teachers and students see and interpret their visual world.
And it's not just about describing what they look at, it's about understanding why they look at those things and how those visual processes relate to learning and teaching.
Exactly. And future research needs to continue exploring these connections, building on the foundational work that's already been done.
Like looking more closely at joint attention, developing more sophisticated models of teachers' professional vision, and finding ways to translate these findings into practical strategies for improving classroom instruction.
And I think it's also important to continue developing and refining the technology itself, making it more portable, more affordable, and more user-friendly so that it can be more widely adopted in educational research and practice.
Because ultimately, the goal is to use this knowledge to help teachers teach better and students learn better, right?
Absolutely. It's about bridging that gap between research and practice, using these insights to create more engaging and effective learning experiences for everyone.
It's really making me think about my own experiences as both a learner and a teacher.
Yeah.
All those moments where visual attention played a role, but that I never really consciously thought about.
It's like a whole new world has opened up to us. And I
Yeah.
think that's the power of this research. It's not just about collecting data, it's about changing the way we see and think about education.
And maybe even changing the way we design our classrooms and train our teachers.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really exciting prospect.
It is. It's like we're just starting to scratch the surface of what's possible.
And who knows what other discoveries await us as we continue to explore the visual world of the classroom.
Well, I, for one, can't wait to see what the future holds. And to all our listeners out there, I encourage you to take a moment to think about your own experiences in classrooms, both as learners and teachers. How has visual perception shaped those experiences? And what can you do to create more visually engaging and effective learning environments? Food for thought, as always.
Excellent points. I think we covered a lot of ground today. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here.